Namo Buddhaya and welcome to Buddha Dharma TV Sunday program. I am Lisa Chu. Today we will start with a Dharma talk followed by a song and a Dhammapada session. The Dharma talk today is by Venerable Miao Guang, who is the personal English interpreter of Venerable Master Xing Yin. She also serves as the English secretary at Fu Guangshan Founding Master's Office. She graduated with a bachelor degree from the Department of Asian Studies, University of New South Wales, and went on to complete her master in Buddhist Studies at Fu Guang University. She is currently serving at Fu Guangshan Institute of Humanistic Buddhism as both a Deputy Chancellor and Director of the Department of International Affairs. She is also the director of Fu Guang Dictionary of Buddhism English Translation Project and also the Complete Works of Venerable Master Xing Yin Translation Project. Honorary Fellow of Humanistic Buddhism, Nantian Institute, Adjunct Associate Professor, Department of Religious Studies, Nanhua University, and Adjunct Assistant Professor, Department of Buddhist Studies, Guangming College. We are grateful to the Venerable for sharing a verse to Dharma titled Journey to Self-Discovery, Part 2.
I quite like this phrase given by the Venerable Master. Right? He says in this verse, in our understanding of emptiness in existence, first of all, you have to understand that there's no self, there's no people, and there's no world. And then he completes his couplet by saying that the next thing you need to understand that, yes, having understood that there is no self, the next thing you need to realize that is that, yes, everything in this world, all the matters are there. When people try to reason with you, their reasons are there, right? And there are exact sentient beings. Okay? And so how he understands emptiness is through a sense of reality by how we make peace with ourselves. And so by saying that there's no self, no people, no world, it applies to our moments of cultivation. But any moment you step off from your meditation cushion and into the reality of the world, you face real human beings with real human emotions. Okay. So how are we able to really use our skillful means, our skillful application of the Dharma to the people who cross paths with us will determine how well we have understood the Dharma. Okay. I see how Venerable Master understands a harmony of both emptiness and existence in very interesting ways. Because by saying there's no certain things, we set up a principle of our expectations of reality. And so after I became renounced, I had the opportunity to start serving as his personal interpreter. And that's when the journey of my life began. It began in such an unimaginable way that my first journey was when the September 11th attack happened. Okay. I was so excited about my traveling around the world that I would meet peaceful and wise people. Right? But that was the day when we actually booked our tickets to New York in October of 2001. A month prior to that, the two planes that were hijacked flew into the WTC, right, and took away thousands of lives. So I could still remember that morning. When it happened, phone calls came from all around the world trying to talk Venerable Master out of going to New York. They were telling him it's simply too dangerous. Right? Don't go. The terrorists were still at loose, right? And they were sending anthrax around in envelopes. We could get hurt easily. So, Master, please don't go. And I could remember for 30 minutes, even after the phone calls, all the venerables around the Master would do the same thing by trying to talk him out of it. So he listened to all this reasoning quietly for half an hour. And finally, at the end of the half hour, he turned to us and said, "Okay, can I talk now?" Right? He gave us our chance to list our reasoning. And then he says, "I understand that you're trying to tell me not to go, but this is exactly the moment when we as Buddhists need to go and offer peace and compassion. Right? Think about the people who are still very scared. That's why we should go. Okay. And so everybody stopped trying to convince him. Then a month later, we managed to arrive in New York. And we were actually very fortunate to be given the chance to really reach into ground zero and to conduct a prayer service. Because what the government had received was that among many of the victims, they were Buddhists. So they were happy for a Buddhist organization to conduct a service to comfort the lives that were lost. So on that morning, we flew in. And before we landed, the pilot made sure that we had a chance to circle above ground zero. And this is what I saw. 1 month after the crash, the steel was still burning. I could still hear the screeching, and they were burning at 1,000 degrees Celsius. Right? So I felt like the plane was about to plunge into ground zero. Yeah. And as we got closer and closer to ground zero, our heart just continued to sink. It was just a whole atmosphere of despair and sadness. People were quiet, right? The security guards stood on their posts without emotions. And you will see the workers continue to clear up this ground with long faces. And so just the 200 meters of distance between entrance to ground zero took us 2 hours, because almost after every post, we were being asked to stop for a security check. Right? And so as we arrived at the spot, when we set up to do our usual chanting, right, the 3 recitations of Avalokiteshvara, the recitation of the Great Compassion Dharani, the prayers, and the offering of flowers. Right? Venerable Master told us the procedure. He says, we're going to do this and that and that and that. Make sure you follow the procedure. Then he turned to me, right, the new beginner interpreter. He said one thing to me. He said, remember, you shall translate as I speak. That was a pretty interesting instruction, right? Usually an interpreter would just translate whatever the speaker says. So I found it quite interesting, with wonders. But then as the ceremony began, you would see that as we did the 3 recitations of Avalokiteshvara and the Great Compassion Dharani, there were about 100 workers around us, Latinos, African Americans, National Americans, and Asians. They all stood there with their arms crossed, wondering what this group of weirdly dressed Buddhists were doing. Right? We were uttering a series of words that they didn't understand. And so they were quite curious, but taken aback by our strange actions. And then came the Buddhist light prayer. Okay, so for those who have heard the Buddhist light prayer, you will know that Venerable Master usually begins by saying, "O great compassionate Buddha." Right? Please accept our sincerest prayers. So that's what I was expecting. But instead, he opened up his prayer by saying the following. He says, "O great compassionate God, Allah, Muhammad, Jesus, and Buddha." Then I just froze. I turned around with my mouth open. I looked at my teacher and thinking, aren't you here to say a Buddhist prayer? Right? And then, so he quickly just tapped me and says, "Didn't I tell you to just translate as I say?" Yeah. He already knew how I would react to his prayer. Right. So I gathered myself together and I repeated his word, right? Dear God, Allah, Jesus, Muhammad, and Buddha. But as soon as I said that, I realized all the security guards around us then unfolded their arms and had their mouth open. They were as surprised as me. Why would Buddhists come and conduct a prayer that begins with God and Jesus and Allah? And then his second line was, "Please bless your people so that they can rest in peace in your heaven, in your garden, in your pure land." Right? So that they may be free from fear, free from worry. Let the diseased rest in peace, and let the survivors be free from their fears and sadness. Then as soon as I translated that, some of the security guards just started crying. I realized it was exactly what they needed. They needed a moment of comfort. But had we just gone in to conduct our usual Buddhist practices based on our own perceptions and principles, nothing would have happened. So by the end of the prayer, after making offerings of flowers, these gods, Caucasians, Latinos, African Americans, all reached Venerable Master. They approached him and asked the question, right? Thank you for the prayer. I am not a Buddhist, but I'm very scared now. Can you please bless me? Right? And immediately, without a word, Venerable Master sprinkled the great Dharani water on them and added one line in English. He said, God bless you. Yeah. You might imagine being that being my first trip, I was extremely surprised with what my teacher was doing. Right? When we were so happy and joyful in having the opportunity to represent the Buddhist organizations in conducting a service, this is what he had been doing all along. Yeah. So I was confused as ever, wondering, is this the way we are ever going to promote Buddhism in the future? Do we always have to include God or Allah or Jesus? Right? Then on our way back to the hotel, my teacher turned around to me and said the following thing to me. He says, do not ever think that just because you're a Buddhist, everything you do will have to be about Buddhism, right? Everywhere you go, if your words and your actions never offered any moment of peace and comfort, then you're as good as having never came. Okay? So that was my first lesson as an interpreter to a teacher of the so-called humanistic Buddhism. I actually came to realize that Buddhism can take so many forms. And now as we give it the prefix humanism, right? As teachers or practitioners, if whatever it is that we learn or practice do not offer help, a peace to the betterment of other human lives, then we are not practicing Buddhism. And so that's why he says, on a personal level, there's no self, right? There's no world, there's no reality. But on an interpersonal level, on a worldly level, there is always human beings. There's always the need of other people that could go beyond your own personalities and expectations. So remember, what remains empty is not the world, but your own preconceptions. And so we go on to that first level of understanding the self in that way. So we'll say again, in plain words, emptiness does not mean that things don't exist. Instead, it refers to the characteristic of everything that have no substantial self. We can never remain unchanging or the same. And because of this empty nature, we have that endless potential to become nothing and everything. That's why the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara begins his journey of enlightenment by first talking to us about human experiences. Right? The 5 skandhas are empty. Okay, and so as he goes on to that next level, right, we go from the emptiness of the self to that second level of emptiness, which tells us that not even just the self is empty that way. Everything you experience is the same. So he says, O Sariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are not produced nor or stopped, not defiled or immaculate, not deficient or complete. Right? And so by this, the marks of all existences really tells you that even though they may appear as they are, but the most important thing is for you to really reflect within. Just like that bag of chocolate cookies, right? Or the dukkha we inflict onto ourselves. Right? This lady looking for her lost puppy, right? Poor thing, I hope the puppy's alive. Yeah. But you might imagine when Venerable Huike walks up to Bodhidharma and says, please help me find my heart. I can't find my heart. Right? I don't know how to settle my heart. Then Bodhidharma turned to his most intelligent student and says, you can't settle your heart? Fine, give me your heart. Bring your heart to me, I can settle it for you. But he goes, but I can't find my heart. And then, in conclusion, Bodhidharma says, there, your heart has been settled. Right? The preconceptions created by the heart is not there. The moment you realize that nothing is really there until you seek within, what you come to decide is you really decide what you see, but don't trust them. So as Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says that all phenomena are marked with the characteristics of emptiness. Right? That's how we mean by that there is no eye, no ears, no tongue, no body, or no mind. Right? That is not to say that you have no eyes, no ear, no tongue, no body. Right? That would be pretty scary. It simply is telling you that don't rely solely on your eye, your nose, your ears, and your body. Allow that deeper level of wisdom to tell you what you see. Okay? So what you see in front of you could be two things right now. You would either see the side of a man's face or the half front of the man's face. Okay? And then when we ask you the question, which one is the real face? Right? The answer we'll get by saying that by no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind, neither of them are real. It's our eyes that deceive us. But what we see and sense can really help us determine what the world looks like. Okay. Let me ask you a question. Which direction is the car moving? Is it to the left or to the right? Can I see a show of hands? If the car to you is moving to the right of the screen, please raise your hand. Okay, what about those moving to the left? Okay, and someone says both, right? Yeah. So who is right, who is wrong? Okay. But this again proves that how much we're deceived by our sensual roots. Because this is what we know as the wagon wheel effect. Right? Your eyes can really decide which direction the car is moving. So what you do is, if you put your focus on the spot of the man over here, close your eyes and open your eyes again, then the train will move in that direction. Right? But if you put your eyes on this side of the window, close your eyes and open your eyes again, then the car will be moving to the right of the screen. Right? Give it a try. Now decide which direction you like, and then close your eyes. Okay? Okay? Close your eyes and open. Right? One direction. Does it really follow the focus you have set on? Yes? Okay, now tell yourself that I want the train to move in the other direction. Okay, close your eyes. Okay, open your eyes and set your eyes on the other side of the screen. Yeah, right. And therefore, your eyes could really deceive you while you continue to talk yourself into the possibility that what you see is the true reality. Okay, so that's what he means by no eyes, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Because the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind have to really work together. Okay. And so by that, we realize that reality or understanding of the fact that all phenomena are empty is actually a realization of what we call the Buddhist sages, the arhats, the Sravakas, or the Pratyeka Buddhas. Right? So ordinary beings rely on their own sensual roots to decide how real the world is. But as you move on to a Sravaka, right, the sage in Buddhism who hears the Dharma, thereby attains enlightenment. Okay? I wish I could just listen to the Dharma and become enlightened, but I'm still not. So a Sravaka manages to do that by realizing that ultimately even dukkha itself does not exist. Right? We are the ones who inflict the idea of dukkha onto ourselves. Right? And then up to the Pratyeka Buddhas who says, okay, I don't just realize that the Four Noble Truths, the whole idea of dukkha and its cause are empty. Even our cycle of birth and death itself is empty. Right? So you will see where he says, there's no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance. Right? And so forth until we come to no decay and death, no extinction of decay and death. So all of these are the 12 items on the 12 links of dependent origination. Right? Due to ignorance, we become conceived. Right? And so in the cycle of 12 links, we begin with ignorance, right? And then we allow that ignorant consciousness to take action, to become conceived in the womb. And then within the womb, our consciousness becomes formed again to create the concept of our sensory roots, our perceptions. Right? And once we're born, we discover that we rely heavily on our feelings. Right? Whatever it is that we like, we cling on to it. For example, the chocolate cookie. Whatever it is that we don't like, for example, people taking our chocolate cookie, we reject it, we get angry, right? We become frustrated. But the most important thing is we feel that this is exactly the way we exist. And so going from ignorance to mental formation, to consciousness, to the six sensory roots, then back to name and form, and then finally sensation, perception. We perceive what we want. If we like it, we cling on to it. As we cling on to it, it gets worse. We become attached to it. Right? I'm so attached to my chocolate chip cookies. Right? But all along, the lady wasn't really attached to her own chocolate chip cookies. What she was attached to was the concept that she owned the cookies. Right? And so when that fails to really peel off, then dukkha arises. And therefore, this is how we continue to exist. This is how we continue to die and become reborn again. But Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara says, okay, if you want to understand the emptiness on the second level, realize that none of these are real. You are never born, you will never die. Right? There is no suffering, there is no end of suffering. So in plain words, when we look at level 2 shunyata, right, we simply need to come to reality to understand that, yes, the world we live in too, just like our understanding of the self, is also constantly changing and will never stay the same. And onto this level, what you see is not what you get. Okay? What you see is never what you get. You experience that every day. You see your beloved ones via FaceTime on your iPhone. Right? You get so happy. Right? But at that moment, you also realize that your loved ones are not right in front of you. This is reality. Make use of your chance to connect, but don't cling onto those moments. Otherwise, you're going to start to feel dukkha. And then thirdly, what you see needs to be seen again. Look at it again and again and again. Give yourself a second chance. Give others more chances to show you what reality is. With what? Your bodhisattva eye. So what is that bodhisattva eye? A sense of empathy. So now on to the third level. A bodhisattva is compassionate because they're willing to put themselves in our shoes, right, to feel what we feel for before they arrive at any conclusion. That is a bodhisattva eye. Okay. So a mom once went home and brought 2 apples to the little girl. Right? So her little girl really loved the 2 apples, held onto them, looked at them. And then that was the moment when the mom decided to see if the girl would be generous enough to share her apple. So she asked her little girl, hey, you've got 2 apples. Would you like to share? And immediately upon hearing this, the little girl took a quick bite of each apple in her hand. Right? The mom was so disappointed. Right? She couldn't bring herself to believe that she had raised a greedy, selfish little girl. So I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if that happened to you, what would your next action be? What would you say or do to the girl?
I would ask her why she did that.
Okay, you will ask her, right? Anyone else? Oh, you will ask for a bite of each apple, right? Let me taste what you taste, right? Okay. Anyone else? Oh, you would teach her to share, right? Yeah, don't be greedy, please share. Okay. Right. So we all react very differently to the little girl's action. Okay. So if I go back to the story, I would choose your option. Right? This mom was so angry, she wanted to teach her little girl to share. But before she said anything, she decided to give her little girl a chance and ask her why. Right? Why did you do that, darling? And the little girl then stuck out one of her apples and said, Mom, take this one. This one is sweeter. Yeah. Yeah. Therefore, what you have seen, you need to see it again. Don't jump to a conclusion based on your perceptions, because others too have their perceptions. Right? Only when the two are harmonized and balanced would you see reality as it is. Not reality as it should be. Okay. And so for that reason, when we move on to level 3 emptiness, right, going from the emptiness of the self, emptiness of the world, emptiness of life and death, right? Finally, the Bodhisattva says there's no cognition, no attainment, and no non-attainment. 无智亦无得，亦无所得故. For there is essentially nothing to be attained. Why? Because by this, anything that you attain or establish becomes a concept or an idea that you will cling tightly onto. But remember, any moment you begin to cling tightly onto something, that becomes, again, your chance to what? Suffer. Okay. And so on level 3 shunyata, based on there's no cognition, no attainment, and no non-attainment, in simple words, in the Bodhisattva mind, concepts are empty too. Okay. The best way to learn is to first unlearn. Right? What you think is, why not begin by thinking, no, it isn't. Think about what else it could be. Just in the little girl's case, so to empty ourselves. Well, mind you, that's going to be extremely difficult. Right? Because when you join a meditation retreat, you discover that the Venerable spent a lot of time teaching you how to walk and breathe. Right? Why would you spend $100 for a weekend on instructions on how to walk and breathe? Right? Yeah. I've been doing this all my life, right? Why would I ask people to teach me again? Right? See? Then at the end of the day, you discover it was totally worth it. Because what the Venerables have shown you is that, yes, I never learned how to walk. I walk with a distracted mind, right? I walk with worries, right? I don't walk with this being mode. By being mode, it means you're in that very moment. And when I'm breathing, when I'm eating, I fail to be in the doing mode. And by doing mode is to focus on nothing but that single action at hand. And so the process of emptying ourselves becomes a chance for us to see through the Bodhisattva eyes. And therefore, the only way to keep your hands free is to keep them open. Hold on to no conceptions. Hold on to no principles. But believe in the compassion and the empathy and the openness in yourself. Okay. And ultimately, when we talk about looking at the world through a Bodhisattva's eyes, which is third level shunyata, Avalokiteshvara wants to tell us that there is you in me and there is me in you. Okay. Again, something very difficult to achieve. But we can see this in that famous story in the Vimalakirti Sutra, Weimojie Jing, right? When this great enlightened Manjusri Bodhisattva and Arhats go and visit a sick man, right? And this lady appears in the room. What happens was, when this lady appears in front of the Arhats and the Bodhisattvas, the man in the middle, who was Sariputra, the poor guy, starts to have unpleasant feelings. What he was thinking was, how rude, how dare you as a woman appear in front of us great Arhats and Bodhisattvas when we're talking about the Dharma. Okay. As soon as he thought about that, he caused great trouble because he never realized that this woman was the transformation of a Buddha. So the lady turns around and says, oh, you're such great arhats, right? And then she caused a rain of flowers to shower down onto all of them. But something funny happened. As soon as the flowers landed on the Bodhisattva's robes, they just slid off. They didn't even attach. But for the poor arhat, poor Sariputra, the flowers stuck to his robe like glue. No matter how hard he tried to brush off the flower, it just wouldn't come off. Right? And so the lady turns to the Arhat and says, you're such a great enlightened one, then you can't even do so much as letting go of your attachments. Right? So that was a simple, nice lesson. Okay. And then the Arhat still wouldn't let go of the fact that a woman had just taught him a lesson. Right? He turned to her and asked, who are you? Right? She says, I am you. How long have you been in this room? The lady goes, I have been in this room for as long as you have been in the cycle of birth and death. Okay. And then he asked her, when will you attain enlightenment? The lady now turns to Sariputra and says, I will attain enlightenment on the day you're willing to turn into a woman. Okay. So this is a very famous story in the Vimalakirti Sutra that teaches us how eventually we go beyond the concepts of reality to see that the self is you and you are me. So for bodhisattvas, their true liberation is the liberation of living beings. A true compassionate person will never feel at ease until everyone in the same room is also at ease. So that's what she means by I will be attaining enlightenment on the day you as a great man is willing to turn yourself into a woman. Because that moment will be when you're ready to let go of such conceptions. So there's you and me and you and me, and you and me and me and you teaches the great Dharma gate of non-duality for bodhisattvas who regard all beings as their own. So if you look at it as an equation, you will see that if your enlightenment is only your enlightenment, if you're the only one to reach the far shore and leave all the rest of the human beings on this shore, would you feel at peace? Okay. If your answer is no, then you have put yourself in the shoe of a bodhisattva. Right? My enlightenment should equal to your enlightenment. And so this moment, what happens is your true enlightenment becomes the realization that when beings are not well, I will not be well. Right? That's when X doesn't equal to X. Okay. I hope I'm not confusing you. Yeah. So true enlightenment is to realize that your own realization is that of the realization of living beings. Okay. And what we see is then we realize even if we experience dukkha in life, it's okay. Right? It's our chance to experience pain and sentiments and all these emotions. So next time we come across people who have that same experience, we might have a chance to share our experience to help them overcome those easily. Okay. So this is Kevin Hines. He's known as the man who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay. He was suffering from severe depression at age 19. So it was the morning when he decided to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. Okay. And as he walked from the car park to the Golden Gate Bridge, he made a pact with himself. He said to himself, if between my car and the spot where I jump off, so much as a single person smiles at me, I will give up committing suicide. But unfortunately on that day, nobody managed to smile at him. So he hopped over the railing and jumped. And immediately upon the moment when he let go, he regretted it. Immediately upon the moment he jumped, all he could think about is to try to stay alive. But it was a 2-degree day. You might imagine the moment you enter that state of free fall, you would travel 800 meters of distance in just 2 seconds, which means your contact with the water surface will be 4 times as hard as your impact with concrete, which means your bone will shatter. So as he realized that, he tried to straighten his entire body to minimize the area of contact. So he dropped into the water by straightening his entire spine. As he entered the water, which was minus 2 degrees C, he felt like 1,000 needles was piercing through his body. And when the cold water entered his lung and his organs, he felt like it was the needles trying to tear his organs apart. But fortunately, he survived. He broke his spine. It took him 2 years to recover. He managed to start walking again. Okay. But after those few seconds of horrifying experience, he made a vow. He says, I now know how terrible it is to suffer from depression that will prompt you to committing suicide. So I want to help people release themselves from such anxieties. So after he recovered, he started a foundation. He wrote a book about his encounter, and his foundation has been focusing on helping teenagers who suffer from severe depression. Okay. He says, if only somebody smiled at me on that day, it would have been so different. But then he says, I'm glad I jumped, because I now know how to help people. Okay? So if we say, yes, emptiness is form, form is emptiness, right? Your suffering is a chance for you to start transforming. The dukkha that you experience will be a chance for you to transform into something wiser. So what we're trying to say here is, as that Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara sits in that beautiful, elegant recline, right, and tells you that experience of realizing how we can be empty, how this world can change, and how eventually a Bodhisattva deals with both the existing and empty phenomena of the world. Right? We too can make peace with every single encounter. But there's a catch. You will never be at peace if your focus is solely on your individual well-being. Because the Dharma itself has already told us that we are born interconnected, and we can never be free from that interconnection. And so as we set out to do more for others, you might discover that you become stronger. Right? As you set out to do more for others, somehow you become much more resourceful. Right? And that's where the self-transformation happens, just like a candle. Right? The more we give, we don't lose, but the more we gain also in return. So I want to close this simple presentation of my understanding of the 3 types of emptiness set in the Heart Sutra, which you chant almost every week, to think about then how do we remain that wise, compassionate, empty bodhisattvas. Okay. I still see that, which is demonstrated by my teacher. Okay. Venerable Master Xing Yun started to suffer from diabetes at age 90, which meant that he was no longer able to see. But he still thought about what he could do to help people. So he came up with a way to write calligraphy without looking. He calls it one-stroke calligraphy. Because to him, he says, if I can't walk, I can't reach out to people, I can't do anything, I'm going to keep writing. So that in this writing, if they embody messages of inspiration, I can still do something for the world. Right? He writes and writes and writes and writes day and night. And then look at his face. Right? The greatest joy comes in the moment when his effort is received by others also in a positive way. Okay. And so for him, there's no longer death or birth. He says, at age 90, I have nothing to lose. I no longer think about death. The only thing I think about is, what else can I do? What more can I do with whatever is left of me? Therefore, for a bodhisattva to say that there is no cognition, there is no attainment, there is no known attainment, it simply means we let go at the same time, at the right time. So true wisdom seeks no reality. Birth and death no longer matters. But true compassion shall seek nirvana for both the self and others, in realizing that the moment I connect with you in life, our life becomes whole. So again, emptiness is form, form is emptiness. What does that mean? Right? There's no others, no self. There's no even state of perfect ease. It doesn't matter. I seek not for my well-being. But at the end, there's no emptiness, no existence, not even a realization of the Buddha himself too, as long as we are helping living beings feel as real and alive as they can be. So Guanyin Bodhisattva tells you there's nothing to attain when you realize everything is what you can attain. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you have gained some perspective on the Heart Sutra. Thank you very much.
Let us now listen to a Buddhist song titled Happy Vesak by Bdtv.
Gently teach the little children how to walk the Buddha's way. Show with kindness and affection what to do and what to say. Even as a tiny twisted grows into a twisted tree. So do man and woman follow patterns learned from infancy. Let us then make sure that always exemplary we clearly show, so that our views life may never down the path of evil go. Teach the young the path to follow, show them in their days of youth, and when old and never waver from Lord Buddha's path of truth. Gently teach the little children how to walk the Buddha's way. Show with kindness and affection what to do and what to say. Even as a tiny twig, if twisted, grows into a twisted tree. So do man and woman follow patterns learned from infancy. Let us then make sure that always exemplary we clearly show, so that our views life may never down the path of evil go. Teach the young the path to follow, show them in their days of youth, and when old and never waver from Lord Buddha's path of truth, from Lord Buddha's path of truth.
Now it is time for the weekly Dhammapada sermon, a collection of sayings of the Buddha, which is one of the best known Buddhist scriptures and most widely read. The weekly Dhammapada will be presented by Venerable Professor Bhante Sivali. Let us welcome Bhante Sivali to present a brief sermon of the Dhammapada verse 97.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Welcome to the Buddha Dharma TV Dhammapada program. Today we are going to discuss verse number 97. And first of all, I want to thank you for coming to listen to this Dhamma talk. The 97th verse begins with asaddho akatanyucha sandicchedo cha yonaro atavakaso vantaso save uttama puriso. The literal meaning is he has no faith in anyone but in himself. He is aware of deathlessness, the unconditioned. He is a breaker of connections because he has severed all his worldly links. He has destroyed all the opportunities for rebirth. He has given up all desires because of all these, he, the Arhat, is a truly noble person. This is the brief meaning of this verse. This happened, there were some 30 forest dwellers approached the Buddha and paid their obeisance to him and sat down. The Buddha, seeing that they possessed the requisite faculties for attaining arahantship, that means Buddha could see that they are capable of realizing the Dhamma. He addressed Venerable Sariputta. Sariputta, do you believe that the quality of faith, when it has been developed and enlarged, is connected with the deathlessness and terminates in the deathless? In this manner, the Buddha questioned the Venerable with reference to the 5 moral qualities. 5 moral qualities. The Venerable Sariputta answered, I do not go by faith in the Buddha in this matter, that the quality of faith, when it has been developed and enlarged, is connected with the deathless and terminates in the deathless. But of course, Venerable, those who have not known the deathless, or seen or perceived or realized or grasped the deathless by the power of reason, such a person must of necessity go by the faith of others in this matter. Namely, that the faculty of faith, when it has been developed, faculty of faith, saddha, when it has been developed and enlarged, is connected with the deathless and terminates in the deathless. Thus did the Venerable answer his question, Buddha's question. When the monks heard this, those who were there, they began a discussion. Venerable Sariputta has never really given up false views. Even today, he refused to believe even the supremely enlightened one. When the Buddha heard this, Buddha said, monks, why do you say this? Why do you say this? Why I asked Sariputta the following question, Sariputta, do you believe that without developing the 5 moral qualities, without developing tranquility and spiritual insight, it is possible for a man to realize the paths and fruits? And he answered me as follows. Asked me as follows. That means there is no one who can thus realize the paths and the fruits. Then I asked him, do you not believe that there is such a thing as the ripening of the fruits of almsgiving and good works? Do you not believe in the virtues of Buddhas and the rest? But as a matter of fact, Sariputta walks not by the faith of others, for the reason that he has, in and by himself, attained states of mind to which the paths and the fruits lead by the power of spiritual insight, induced by ecstatic meditation. Therefore, he is not open to censor. He is not open to censor. He has no faith in anyone but in himself. He is aware of deathlessness, the unconditioned. Deathlessness, it means the unconditioned. He is a breaker of connections because he has severed all his worldly links. He has destroyed all the opportunities for rebirth. He has given up all desires. Because of all these, he, the Arhat, is truly a noble person. Here in this verse, that there are two words to be explained. Asaddho, non-believer. He so firmly believes his own view and that of the Buddha, he does not need to believe in any other. Akatanyu, literally ungrateful. But in this context, aware of the unconditioned, that is Nibbana. Aware of unconditioned, the Nibbana, final emancipation. Sandicchedo. Sandicchedo is the term usually given to a burglar because he breaks into houses, but here it signifies severing all world connections. Then Hatavakasu, a person who has given up all opportunities. But here it is meant having given up opportunities for rebirth. There's no chance for whatsoever for rebirth. That is the Hatavakasu means. All the expressions in this stanza can be interpreted as applying to persons who are not noble, but to depraved persons. But the interpretation of those forms to give positive, spiritually wholesome meanings and not negative ones is quite intriguing. In other words, the Buddha has, in this stanza, used a set of expressions used in general parlance to denote people of mean behavior. But due to the implications attributed to them by the Buddha, these depraved terms acquire high significance. So, this verse is also connected to the next verse, that is number 98. That is, Gameva yadiva aranye, Ninneva yadiva thale, Yatte rathanto veranti, Tam bhumin ramaniyakam. Tam bhumin ramaniyakam. That is, the literal meaning is whether in the village, in the forest, or in the valley, or in the plain, wherever arhats, notable saints, dwell, that place is alluring in the extremes. In the extremes. So the arhat, the term, the noble ones, evolved ones, arhat, the noble ones, the evolved ones, they are also described as Arya Puggala, noble ones. Arya Puggala are those who have realized one of the 8 stages of holiness, the 4 supermundane paths, magga, and the 4 supermundane fruitions, phala, of these paths. There are 4 pairs. The one realizing the path of stream winning, the one realizing the fruition of stream winning. That's the first pair. Then the one realizing the path of one's return, the one realizing the fruition of one's return. That the one realizing the path of non-return, the one realizing the fruition of non-return, path and fruition. The one realizing the path of holiness, the one realizing the fruition of holiness. That can be summed up. There are 4 noble individuals, the stream winner, the one's returner, the non-returner, the holy ones. In some texts, Gotrabhu is listed as the 9th noble individual. According to the Abhidhamma, supermundane path, or simply path, magga, is a designation of the moment of entering into one of the 4 stages of holiness. Nibbana being the object produced by intuitional insight into the impermanency, misery, and impersonality of existence, flashing forth and transforming one's life and nature. By fruitions are meant those moments of consciousness which follow immediately thereafter as a result of the path, and which in certain circumstances may repeat for innumerable times during lifetimes. So, we have already discussed paths and the fruition, and who are the arhats, what qualities they possess, what they have dropped, eliminated, how they transform into the highest level of spirituality. In previous verses, 96, 97, 98, all we have discussed. So you can go back to and see them. These are the detailed explanation about the arhanship that we have discussed lately. May you all be well and happy.
Gently teach the little children how to walk the Buddha's way. Show with kindness and affection what to do and what to say. Even as a tiny twig, if twisted, grows into a twisted tree. So do man and woman follow patterns learned from infancy. Let us then make sure that always example right we clearly show, so that our views life may never down the path of evil go. Teach the young the path to follow, show them in their days of youth, and when older never waver from Lord Buddha's path of truth, from Lord Buddha's path of truth.
That concludes today's program. If you have any questions about the contents of our broadcast, please feel free to reach out to us at info@buddhadharmatv.com. Our dedicated team remains committed to the sharing of the profound teachings of the Buddha, helping you walk the path of wisdom and enlightenment. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next week at the same time. Namo Buddhaya.